All right, so we got a comment the other day on a video, and it was from Airmail Dolphin 7013. He says, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we didn't get a continuation of the first Dispatch story, but instead a Brave Brigade prequel. I know that some of you may not agree with this. I know that some of you guys might say, well, no, because I want to see Robert, I want to be Robert, I want to see Blonde Blazer, Vizzy, and see what happens next. Now, I agree with that part. I do want to see what happens next. I want a sequel really fucking bad. But I had never thought of a prequel game that talked about the events and the city of Torrance and the city of superheroes and villains before everything that happened in our current modern Dispatch. That could give us some really good insight. And I think that's a wonderful, fantastic fucking idea and comment from Airmail Dolphin 7013. That shit got me thinking, you know what? I could actually see this. Now, we are going to get a second season of Dispatch as we know it. And I do believe that that is something that Adhoc wants to do. I mean, the success of the first game and the success of this just coming into our minds is something that we can't shake. It's something that it's not going to leave us until we get more and more and more. But in the meantime, in the interim, wouldn't it be good to explore maybe a potential prequel? And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Because if we do that, then that allows us to expand the world of Dispatch even more. Add more lore to it, add more history to it, and introduce many more characters, many more heroes, many more villains, and deal with different personalities again. Maybe it would be interesting for the overall world of Dispatch. And then you can see from the point of view of potentially Robert's dad, Robbie. You could play as Mecha Man Astro and deal with some stuff during your prime and deal with making choices that affect maybe Robert and help shape him into the future, and deal with things going on in the Brave Brigade and all the hero conflicts that you kind of have, and deal with maybe Eli even showing up and having to deal with his dumbass. Like, there's a lot that you could do in a prequel to Dispatch, and I think focusing on the Brave Brigade would be really cool. You have Chase come back as Trackstar. Now you have somebody that you know personally from the first game or from the first story of Dispatch, and Chase can be, you know, the right-hand man of Robbie like he seems to be in the game. You know, clearly it looks like they're maybe some sort of best friends, or at least very, very good friends. And so having Chase there gives you something familiar, gives you something to hold on to while you explore that story. I think this could also be a very interesting way to continue to explore Robbie and his relationship with his son, Robert. We can understand kind of the intricacies of what really happened when they were building the Astropulse. We can understand what type of person Robbie really was, because we're taking control of a new protagonist or a new main character. And we have this character who is a little bit more prone to anger, a little bit more uncontrollable, a little bit more unpredictable, a little bit more maybe self-centered and narcissist. If you want to go that route, you can really get to know Robbie. You can really get to know why he's like that. And you can really get to know if he can change, or if there was more to him than what we learned. Maybe there's a push and a pull in his mind about the decisions that you make. Throughout the story and throughout the prequel game of the Brave Brigade, you could have Robbie make decisions that could be good, bad, or somewhere in the middle, right? Basically like you do with all these types of episodic games. But for him, it would be particularly different because he's so, angry. And I don't know, maybe you could just explore him more. And I think that's a really cool idea, because although I'm not like a super supportive person of what Robbie did and some of his actions as we were shown in the comic books of Dispatch, there's something inside of me that doesn't necessarily believe that he was all that bad. And we even made a video about that. We dedicated a whole video titled, Was Robbie Misunderstood, or Was Mecha Man Astro Misunderstood? And my argument there was that maybe there's more to Robbie than meets the eye. Maybe there was something else. Maybe he wasn't really a bad, terrible guy all the time. Maybe he just was to Eli. Maybe he didn't like Eli. Maybe he didn't trust Eli. Maybe he thought Eli was bullshitting. Maybe he thought Eli was a piece of shit and saw through his superiority complex or something. I don't know. Maybe he saw that and he was like, you know what? This guy isn't really about it. He's not really wanting to be a superhero, so fuck him. I'll fuck him up, teach him a lesson, and send him going. Now, am I saying that's right or wrong? I don't know. Okay, I don't know. But I don't necessarily think he did all that bad by beating the dog shit out of Eli. You know, Eli was just there kind of bothering and then said, put him up, let's fight. And that's what Robbie did in a way. So I don't know. There's just a lot more story there to be told. There's a lot more secrets to unfold. And I think that would make for a really interesting game. And then because of you having to do a prequel and you being in the world of Dispatch, some stuff would be familiar to us. We would kind of know the city of Torrance. We would maybe see another hero or maybe see younger versions of the characters that we met in the main Dispatch, but it would be a little bit different because you could introduce a new love story. You could introduce new characters that Robbie can romance. Maybe Robbie was more of a ladies' man and he had one woman in particular that he really wanted, but he never really kind of went for because of whatever reason. So maybe you can create a little tension there, and then you can give the option of him to sleep around or get together with other women because maybe that's how he was. I don't know if that was his actual personality, but we never hear about his wife or we never hear about Robert's mom like at all throughout the story. I'm pretty sure she's never mentioned. I'm pretty sure we never see any pictures. Now, I could be wrong. I don't see every little detail of the game sometimes. So if his mom did pop up at some point, I wouldn't really know about it. So my point is that you could create a whole new story and you wouldn't have to worry about, well, do I upset the Blonde Laser fans? Do I upset the Vizzy fans? Do I upset the fans that want Malevola or other characters to be romanceable options? With the prequel for Dispatch in the Brave Brigade, you can introduce new love interests and try something a little bit different. Take the experiences and what you learned from the first Dispatch and how people reacted to that, and you can kind of mold that into something a little bit new and a little bit different in the prequel for Dispatch. All right, guys, I want to take a quick break from the Dispatch, and I just want to say thank you for watching these videos. Thank you for supporting me. And I want to ask that you please consider hitting the subscribe button. If you love what I do here, gaming discussion, gaming news, gaming lore, story deep dives, Call of Duty, Dispatch, all that stuff. If you really enjoy it and you haven't subscribed yet, please, again, I would ask that you consider to subscribe because we have a goal to hit 30,000 subscribers before we bring in the new year. That gives us a little short window to try to hit that, and it's going to be very, very difficult, but I know with your help we can get there, and it would mean a lot to me. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Let's go ahead and get back to Dispatch. Now, again, I'm speaking like this is going to happen, or I'm speaking like that's going to be the next thing, or like, you know, obviously, maybe it won't happen. Probably it won't happen. But getting the idea out there and seeing how much interest there is in it, I think is very important to see. And who knows, maybe one of the devs at adhoc see this and say, oh, you know what, this is a good idea. Maybe we should, you know, throw some ideas together and see what happens. Or maybe they're such a fucking good studio and they're thinking about so many different things and thinking about everything that they already have this idea. And this is already something that maybe they're going to work on. But just the concept of potentially going back in time, 15, 20 years into the city of Torrance and exploring a new hero squad like the Brave Brigade, seeing them in their prime, seeing them tackle certain things, and seeing how Robbie, who seems to be the leader of the Brave Brigade, handled that situation. How did he deal with being the leader of the Brave Brigade? What his personality was like is something very interesting. How he treated other members of the Brave Brigade. How he treated his life at home with Robert. We could see a young Robert kind of come in through the ranks and maybe see him talk to his dad a little bit and see where that disconnect was and why that disconnect was there. That could give an emotional anchor to the story. That can give an emotional pull of, oh, damn, now I see what people meant. Now I see why Robert's relationship wasn't necessarily the best. But you could always tell that Robert loved his dad very much. So you could kind of see that, and it could kind of hurt. You know, it could create for a very emotional story. Another thing that I think would be very, very interesting is getting to truly know the other members of the Brave Brigade, like Vitalia, and maybe see a little bit more of Trackstar, and some of the other unnamed members that we don't really know anything about. Who are them? You could also potentially explore the relationship of Robbie, Mecha Man Astro, and his father, Bobby, Mecha Man Prime, the first Mecha Man hero. You could see how his relationship was. You could hear more about his grandfather. And obviously that wouldn't necessarily mean, okay, now we're going to go even more back in time. You could do that. You could drop the prequels and kind of go in a reverse order, but I don't know. I think that Mecha Man Astro, I think Robbie is a very interesting character from my point of view, in my opinion, from what I've seen in the comics and the little bit that I saw of him in the game. I don't know. There's potential there for a story to be told. Now, obviously, I would welcome any type of content from adhoc when it came to Dispatch. I would happily accept anything they decide to do because they've earned that much, being such a great fucking studio and making this amazing amazing ass game. But I will say that I am looking forward to more Dispatch, and I would love to continue the story of Robert and Blonde Blazer and see Vizzy and see the gang and kind of see what happens next to them. But if in the future, maybe not the near future, but years down the line, they decide to explore a potential Brave Brigade prequel to Dispatch, where you focus on Robbie Robertson and see how he really was as a person, see how he really was as a hero. Check out his relationships with his son, with Trackstar, with Eli, with his own father, with other women, romancing options. That could be really awesome and cool and unique. Now, could this also be maybe a potential smaller story? Could you do a DLC where you drop 3 episodes only? You know, there has been some conversation with Dispatch about DLC and releasing some of the most explicit scenes that were cut from the game between Blonde Blazer and Robert, or between Vizzy and Robert, and kind of seeing what happens there. So maybe instead of doing that, they could have like an episode or 2 or 3 release as a DLC for a small Brave Brigade prequel, something little, maybe like a short story of a conflict that Robbie's dad went through that he needed to fix, and you know what he did and the choices that he made. You could do something like that as well. So I don't know, there's a lot of potential there, but this comment, this idea was fantastic, and it was something that I wanted to talk a little bit more and explore a little bit more here with you guys. Obviously, if you think this is a good idea, let me know down in the comments. Would you welcome a prequel for Dispatch that maybe concentrated on Robbie and the Brave Brigade? And if not, what would you like to see from Adhoc next?